Look, a dog. Look, a robot with cameras and microphones and a videotape type data storage system. But how did that robot recognize that thing or those light and sound waves as a dog? Google? Maybe? Another question, though, how does a person know a dog? Aristotle had one model, which we have talked about. John Locke had another. But any way you slice it, it's the same problem, an outside-inside game. The physical world touches the mental, but how? In the words of one famous philosopher, don't worry about it. But to others, that is a worthy problem. Quote, the impression of sensible bodies is not sufficient to cause intellectual operations. That's Aristotle. He, and nearly everyone since, has disagreed. After all, those teeth would leave an impression. So what was Aristotle's argument? Well, it comes from the book On the Soul, Book 3, Chapter 5, Becker, column 430A. Good thing I have the cheat codes. Anyway, 2 points. First, the mind is incorporeal. Well, how do you know that? Because it can abstract species from numberless dogs and numberless other species. Think about it this way. If the pupil of the eye were colored with a particular color, it could not see every color. That's a charming analogy. Second, the agent is nobler than the patient. Motion, we remember, is from potential to actual, and this, we also remember, requires an agent in act. Putting the pieces together. Nothing corporeal can make an impression on the incorporeal. Nothing corporeal can make an impression on the incorporeal. That's hard to say. And therefore, in order to cause the intellectual operation, the impression of sensible bodies does not suffice, but something more noble is required. We're assuming, of course, the priority of actual being to non-being. That is another story and another video. But okay, how can a human know a dog? By making a distinction between the possible intellect and the agent intellect, potential and actual, both inside the mind. Becoming all things, we've seen that already, but making all things, well, just as the matter receives its form from art, the agent intellect puts the intelligible species into the possible intellect. Another analogy. It's a good one, but the next one is my favorite. The possible intellect is to colors in the sight as the agent intellect is to colors in the light. The agent intellect reveals, and the possible intellect sees. Maybe that explains the whole light bulb thing, but something is still missing. If art acts on this to make that, and then fire acts on this to make that, what is the raw material for the agent intellect? What are, in this analogy, the colors? Not light waves, but phantasms, sense images, potential to actual, again and again and again. So these two powers do it. They connect the material and the mental worlds right here at the phantasms. But hey, wait, slow down. What are those things again? Are they material or immaterial? Well, they're both. How can that be? We'll get to that in a second. Are they potential or actual? Again, both. Just like this is an actual house and a potential house fire. If you come at it from one direction, the phantasms are caused by material sense impressions, but they are simultaneously the immaterial starting point for the agent intellect. Resolving contradictions. That's what this model does. That's its superpower. All right, let's see if I got this down now. Dog colors and dog sounds are sensed and bundled into phantasms, which are then abstracted by the agent intellect and stored in the memory. No, not in the memory. Memory happens here. Animal knowledge and dreams, all that stuff is connected still with the physical sensation. Understanding, on the other hand, is an act of the mind, the first act, and with a clear and correct conception of what a dog is, what dog means, that allows the second act of the mind, judging, true or false, or more likely both with a carefully drawn distinction. Back to modern times. because these days we know a lot more about the senses. Your eye does not just deliver data to the brain, the signals are running in both directions. And I heard it said once that the eye should be thought of as a piece of the brain pushed out into contact with the world, that several steps of data processing, that was his term, data processing, occurs even before the signal leaves the optic nerve. Interesting. And Aristotle reminds us that this processing is not necessarily a filter or a subjective delusion. It's not a distortion. That's what I mean. It's not a distortion. What is actually sensible in the dog is actually in the senses, just as what is actually intelligible in the dog is actually in the intellect, just as the blueprint is actually in the house or the sculpture. More than a faithful recreation, this is a continuation of the world. Oh, and another thing about the agent intellect, unlike the phantasms, it is no way connected with matter, and unlike the possible intellect, it never changes. The immortal soul, perhaps? Avicenna and Maimonides, according to Wikipedia, held that the active intellect was the lowest of the 10 emanations, and we've met that epistemology before. I like that one. Averroes wrote about how one could conjoin oneself with the active intellect, thus attaining a kind of philosophical nirvana. Again, quoting from Wikipedia, Thomas Aquinas argued against Averroes, connecting the agent intellect with the individual human personality, and you also could say ghosts flittering around, disconnected from the phantasms, which we agree is necessary for cognition, like an operating system with no inputs.